and now we're talking about year 2, State of the Union address. And the president, I understand, Kellyanne, will have a theme. A theme will be to stop the resistance. Will it resonate?
Greatness. Well, he has several themes, but I would characterize this overall as visionary. You are absolutely correct, though. The president is calling for unity. He's calling for an end to retribution and resistance politics and more cooperation and compromise. He's proven this is possible. Whether you look at the historic opioids and drug legislation, more recently criminal justice reform legislation, where you had overwhelming and in some cases unanimous Democratic support for laws that are now in the books because this president signed them in. And one of the guests today in the First Lady's box, Matthew Charles, one of the first people to benefit from criminal justice reform, the First Step Act. He's now released from prison. He served his time. He found God while he was there. He's helped others. He helped others through his studies and through his counseling while he was there. He will be a guest tonight to actually show the deliverables, to show that the human spirit, and in this case, a human being, has benefited directly from the president working with the Democratic Congress to help get things done. Other guests you see, and the reason I want to highlight some of the guests today is I think they get very short shrift from many people who are covering the State of the Union and are just looking for the negativity from the president and from other people here. I think looking at the guests is important too, because you look at someone like Elvin Hernandez, who's up on your screen. He's an ICE agent who has helped stop so much trafficking and smuggling. I'm going to post on my Twitter feed at Kellyanne Polls in the next few minutes after I'm done here new statistics from Homeland Security investigations from ICE. It is unbelievable. Everybody needs to see this. This is not manufactured crisis. These are real tangible results, stopping the human smuggling, stopping the child trafficking, stopping the opioid crisis, stopping the criminals. We need a physical barrier. We need that wall as the centerpiece of immigration reform, and the president will talk about that. I think it's also a very uplifting address to celebrate milestones of American greatness, including those that have anniversaries coming up in 2019. And when he's calling for unity and he's talking about giving actual portraits of Americans who have achieved greatness on behalf of all of us, including our brave men and women in uniform. Anybody who's sitting there with their arms folded, harumphing, looking like they sucked on 12 lemons, that's on them, not him. Because he's calling for unity. He's calling for working together. Right. They're going to need to decide if they're serious about that as well.
Well, Kellyanne, just to reel back the Wayback Machine, it was just, what, a week or two ago, Nancy Pelosi uninvited him because the government was closed and said, if you want us to negotiate, you got to reopen the government. He did. And now it does appear that she is she's back where she started from. There will be no money for the wall. So the president, while he's trying to get some unity going, essentially he's going to say, look, what's going on our southern border, I've read in the paper, he's going to say, is a national emergency. If you don't want to help me, I'm going to go it alone.
He is wanting the legislature to do its job. It's failed to do it for a matter of years, if not decades. It is Congress's job to come up with meaningful immigration reform that certainly includes a physical barrier that you can't crawl under, climb over, drive through, or walk around, something that truly works. We've got barriers already. Many Democrats have voted for them. But it also includes, as you know, more immigration judges, more Border Patrol agents, more money for humanitarian needs, more money for technology and other detection metrics to stop these drugs from coming in. And as we all know, because the president introduced it publicly 2 weeks ago, we've still not gotten a counteroffer, by the way. He introduced 2 weeks ago an immigration reform plan that also tackled DACA and TPS. So the speaker went from disinviting the president to the State of the Union to now needing to sit behind him and resist the usual raised eyebrows and rolling eyes and all. I'm very curious to see how she's going to react, sort of when she'll applaud, when she'll stand up, when she won't, but also just resisting looking like somebody who's wearing her heart on her sleeve, or her reactions on her face, I should say. Look, this president's going to get up and he's also going to talk about the accomplishments as president. Many people try to deny them, but you can't deny them when you have an audience one-on-one with the American people. He has remade our judiciary. We are the #1 export of oil and gas now. He has absolutely helped unemployment get lower and wages get higher. The dereg is great. There are so many successes that people should be able to stand up and say, America is a country that works. literally, and he's just getting started. We were told industries like manufacturing, construction, mining, dead on its backs. Go ahead and get rid of that. Go ahead and learn to be in the gig economy. And yet we have net increases in all of these industries now. I personally know people who are working in those industries anew, and they feel like they've got economic freedom opportunity for their families.
Kellyanne, there's so many topics that we've heard are going to be a part of this conversation. What about the abortion topic? Because Democrats have just blocked a bill where if a baby does survive an abortion, they're saying the baby should not get aid from a doctor.
The president will absolutely review this, and I've talked to him privately and in smaller groups the last week many times about this issue. It was completely outrageous that the Virginia governor, Ralph Northam, who's now embroiled in his own racist photo controversy, actually go back and look what he said. He said if the, quote, infant, after the infant is delivered, he didn't say sonogram blob, he didn't say uterine material, he didn't say unknown polywog, he said infant. They're admitting that this is a human being. And I think for all the gobbledygook that legislation sometimes bears as its name, this one, folks, is easy to understand. It's called the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. It actually would do exactly what it says. Born alive infant, protect it. And Patty Murray of Washington State, mark it down, folks. She blocked it. So the Democratic Party is leaning all the way in, jumping off a cliff to be pro-abortion in the 9th month. And this is who they are now. They're for 70% taxes, socialized medicine, abortion in the 8th and 9th month, and so on. Yes.
Lastly, the president used to go out on stage with a few remarks on the back of a piece of paper and just talk for an hour. Will he be going off script? Did he let everybody know? I'll read some of this and I'll ad-lib some of this. Do you expect him to go verbatim or mix it?
Well, the last 2 years, the joint session and last year's State of the Union, the president was reading the remarks that he had helped to craft, and then once in a while he'll stop for emphasis. He adds his own personal flourish. But remember, the address itself has a heavy hand from the president in it. He sharpied it all up at different times, and these passages are his own. He's worked with his team, his communications and his speech writing team. Obviously, they know his voice and the content and tone, but he will have had so much input into it that there's really no reason to ad-lib.
Well, our coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Kellyanne, thank you very much for joining us from the White House, where I'm sure you got a busy day.
We'll have all the highlights tomorrow morning.
And with the caravan now on our doorstep, a top Democrat on the bipartisan negotiating committee is teasing a potential compromise for the wall.
First of all, we're not going to have a wall. Now, can we look at some sort of enhanced barrier? That's something we can certainly look at, maybe some sort of enhanced barrier. But again, Washington cannot dictate what sort of barrier and where to put it at.
All right, so is a barrier enough to satisfy the president and maybe more importantly his base, since he did all that campaigning promising a wall? Here to debate that, GOP strategist Kimberly Klacik and president of Americans for Limited Government, Richard Manning. Guys, thanks for coming on this morning. That's a Democrat from Texas saying that he's open to the idea of borders. That has to be seen as some kind of progress. Kimberly, we'll start with you.
All right, well, good morning. I just want to start with the facts, really. Experts have said that a border wall is more effective than a barrier. Prior to November elections, all we heard from the left is how much they care about the children coming across the border. Experts say that less children will be caught up in trafficking if they actually put a wall up. We also saw that in 2015, a study came out that 99.8% of methamphetamine coming in and being seized in the U.S. comes across the southern border. As the left say, they actually want to do something about the war on drugs. So no matter what, a wall is more effective, but if we have to go with the barrier, we will. But I think this is really just about making sure that Trump doesn't give his campaign promises to who they voted for.
And Democrats say that, of course, those drugs come through the legal ports of entry, but not all of it. About 90% is what we hear. Richard, over to you. I'm sure a wall is probably taller and more effective than a barrier of some kind, but do you think that the president's base would be satisfied if you got a few hundred miles of barriers in these high-profile areas and you reduce the number of illegal immigrants coming in dramatically? Is that enough?
I think if the president gets a steel barrier, and I'm Let's be clear. The thing that was said by the Democratic rep is significant in that he said that Washington shouldn't be dictating what kind of barrier it is. That would give the president tremendous amount of leeway to build a steel barrier that really was significant. One of the things this president learned from the Border Patrol is that they wanted to have some transparency, an ability to see through the barrier, which you can't do with concrete. So this president can make a case to his base, very simple case, that this is a better alternative than a concrete wall. It's the alternative that the Border Patrol actually wants, and in fact will be an effective way of dealing with illegal immigration and funneling people into ports of entry where they can be checked for disease and to make certain that we're not viewing a continuation of this human trafficking crisis.
Yeah, and the trafficking, of course, is one of the saddest stories that comes out of this. Kimberly, when you look at this, what do you think the potential is? We're about 10 days out now of some kind of a deal here.
I think there is potential. I think, honestly, Democrats, if they don't compromise here, it's really just shooting themselves in the foot. Because what people do is when they go to vote, they elect people that actually get things done, that have solutions, that'll bring results to the table. And right now, we've been watching a cat fight going on for months about this. If they don't compromise, I don't think they'll see those votes in 2020. I think Trump will. And I think we'll actually sway some independents to be more pro-Trump. And I think this actually will work in his favor in the long run.
Yeah. And Richard, one last thing here. I mean, we're talking about giving a pile of money to DHS and Border Security. Shouldn't they be allowed to decide what to do with the border? I mean, you have politicians that live in Washington trying to dictate whether or not and how we control our border. Shouldn't that be left to the experts?
Rob, absolutely. That's the most amazing part about this. We've got a bunch of Congress critters trying to dictate how to build a wall. You know, first of all, President Trump knows how to build, but most importantly, the Border Patrol knows what's needed. And we should listen to the Border Patrol agents who are telling us that we need to have a strong barrier, that it needs to be transparent. And a steel barrier, a tall, strong steel barrier, will do the trick. And that's exactly what Congress should give President Trump.
Yeah. You know, this is an interesting little debate we have here, and we got 10 days left until maybe a decision. Maybe we could see something tonight, but I think a lot of people are hoping not. We'll find out. Guys, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.